Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this latest teaching session in the course on technology and the future of medicine. Today I want to remind you this is an important day in science fiction movie history, and that you may remember in Back to the Future that the flux capacitor that enables time travel was developed on November 5th, 1955. So, in real life, some quite nice things have happened in terms of the future of this course. There's a new course being developed at Semmelweis University in Budapest, Hungary, to start in February, that's modeled on this course. And they would like to have cooperation between the students in their course and in our course here. Also, Osmer Zayan, who you met last Tuesday at Julie Lin Wong's lecture on social media, even though he will still be on sabbatical next term, he has agreed to do the AI teaching. And so he will give 3 AI lectures on January 21st, 23rd, and 28th. And Patrick Pilarski, who gave quite a successful lecture this term, will speak on January 30th. So it looks like a great course next time, and if you would like to talk to your friends and associates about taking it, I think in addition to all the good things about the course, this time it'll have a lot of added features with this other course on the other side of the world, sort of modeling our course. I'll tell you more about that on Thursday. Today we're honored to have the Dean of Science, Jonathan Schaeffer, talking about artificial intelligence and games. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Can you guys see me okay through the light? You sure? Okay. My apologies in advance. The slides look pretty dark on the screen, but they're beautiful in color on my laptop, so you'll just have to trust me that the colors are nicer than they look. So until March the 7th, which is the day that the provincial government announced their devastating budget cuts for the university, not that I'm getting political, but prior to March the 7th, I had the world's greatest job. Once you have budget cuts, all bets are off. So I am the founder and the lead person in what we call the Games Research Group. It's the largest group in the world doing artificial intelligence research and applying it to games. When I was a graduate student, people said, oh, if you're interested in artificial intelligence, you should work on medical diagnosis systems. So I looked at all the early papers on medical diagnosis systems. And it didn't interest me because, like, too much jargon, too much terminology. I'd have to learn a lot, and I'm not a doctor. Sorry, I'm a medical doctor. Then I said, well, then you should work on legal systems, right? We should have computers that play judge and jury. And man, oh man, when I started studying, none of this stuff was online. None of it was in databases. How are you going to build a legal system if you didn't have access to all the cases and the case law? And of course, it's all text, and how do you analyze the text? And people said you just had to work on something that was really important to society. And I said, screw you. No, I didn't say that. I said, I'm not interested in doing that. I want to do things that are fun. And games are fun to me. So I've been working on games for over 30 years. And I formed the Games Research Group here at the U of A. We started out working on the classic games, classic board and card games like chess, checkers, and Go. We moved into other kinds of games like card games, poker, hearts, and spades. And we've been working on a much more interesting problem. It's the area what's called general game playing. You can build a program that plays chess and it plays great chess, but that's all it does is play chess. It's an idiot savant. General game playing is you build a program that takes the rules of a game and then learns how to play that game very well. It's like a universal game player. From the rules, figure out how to play a strong version of that game. You and I can do it, right? I can teach you a game in 5 minutes, and then if you're interested and you want to study it, you'll become a good game player. If I give you my checkers program and say, play poker, it has no idea what you're talking about. We also branched out into the commercial games realm. We continue to work with BioWare on role-playing games. We worked with Electronic Arts on sports games. Of course, Electronic Arts now owns BioWare, so technically we work with just Electronic Arts these days. So my area of interest is artificial intelligence, and what the official definition is, and there's many definitions of artificial intelligence, but it's really concerned with making computers do things that you and I consider requiring human skill. If you and I can do it, let's get a computer to do it, and perhaps to do it better. And it encompasses all sorts of things. So artificial intelligence is really a very broad area because we're talking about reasoning, vision, language, learning, creativity, robotics, planning. And what's really amazing is how incredibly difficult it is. Think about what I'm doing right now. I'm standing in front of you. I'm giving a speech in real time. Instantaneously, those words are being formed into sentences which compose ideas, and presumably I'm saying something logical. At the same time, I'm using my eyes, and I'm seeing this big picture in incredible detail. And not only am I seeing this picture, but I'm doing object recognition, like chairs and desks and lamps and people and shirts and glasses. I can see it all, and I'm doing it instantly. I'm waving my hands around, I'm doing all sorts of other background processing, and it's absolutely phenomenal. And what makes it more impressive is we've got these mega fast supercomputers, and they can't, in many areas, mimic what you and I can do naturally, easily, that we learn to do, and it's all biological. It works at a very slow speed compared to, say, the electrical circuits that a computer has. All very amazing. Now, this next thing I want to mention is really a pet peeve of mine. Because although we're in the computer revolution, what I really see is a computer evolution of what's happening. Because what we need to do is rethink what it means to think. Now, I started on a hobby horse of mine about 13 years ago, because you may remember it. It was the year 1999. We're about to hit the year 2000. Why was that so significant? Because it was the end of a year, but it was also the end of a decade, the 1990s, the end of a century, the 20th century, the end of a millennium, right? 1,000 years. And you're too young to remember it, but at that time there were so many lists. The newspapers were full of lists, like what were the top 10 news events of the year, or the biggest news events of the decade, or what were the biggest celebrities of the last century. And some of them were scientific in nature, like what were the biggest inventions of the last 100 years. And you think back 100 years, like go back to the year 1900, where we learned how to fly, airplanes, cars, refrigeration, computers. All sorts of incredible things happened in that last century and are happening in this century. But the most impressive scientific contribution never appeared on any list. The most profound, game-changing contribution did not appear. And in my opinion, it's the realization that intelligent behavior, something we consider uniquely human, you, me, we possess this intelligence, that we could actually achieve that same behavior on a silicon chip. Silicon chip is 1/4 of an inch. There's no moving parts. It's a bunch of materials and electrons flowing through those materials. And yet that little chip can play chess better than you. This is unbelievably profound. We think that we are special. We think that we're unique. And yet a silicon chip and other forms of computational models, like quantum computing or DNA computing, can do things that we consider uniquely human. We think we're at the top of the food chain, but maybe we're not, because there's other ways of achieving intelligence, and there's a lot of evidence that these other ways can actually achieve intelligence above and beyond what we're capable of. So, One of the problems that we have with AI, artificial intelligence, is that it's a moving target. Cast your mind back to the year 1900. Pretend you went back to the year 1900. And, you know, it's pretty primitive then. There are no computers. There are no airplanes. You're going to school. You might even be going to a university, and somebody's in front of you, and you can be sure they're at a chalkboard, right? Scrawling away on chalk onto the blackboard. What if I gave you a little black box and I said, I'm not going to tell you what's inside this box, but if you give me your essay, your handwritten essay, this thing's going to find all your spelling mistakes and correct your grammar. In the year 1900, you would have thought, wow, that's unbelievable that a black box could fix my spelling and grammar mistakes. Because again, who can do that? Humans can do that. My dog can't do it. You know, a fish can't do it. Only humans can do that. And here's a black box that can do that. And yet the scary thing is today, 100 years from now, nobody considers spelling correction or grammar correction to be artificial intelligence. It's like, we know how to do spelling correction and grammar stuff. It's understood. It's purely mechanical, so it's not AI. We just ignore it. Let's cast our mind back 50 years. The airplane's been invented. You get on an airplane, and all of a sudden you realize that the pilot isn't flying the airplane. That it's all done by a computer. The pilot's sitting there with his arms crossed, just watching the instruments, and the plane is doing all the hard work, adjusting its height, making the turns, perhaps even doing, in 1960s, automated landings or departures. And you would have been amazed. A computer flying an airplane with no human intervention. That's got to require intelligence. That's amazing. And yet today, that's not artificial intelligence. We know how to do it. It's a simple vision system, a simple learning system. It's not even part of AI anymore. And so what we've discovered is that artificial intelligence is a moving target, because so many things that we think require intelligence actually boil down to very simple processes that you can just program, set up as rules, and it's purely mechanical. And so the world of AI, which we think is this huge area of things that you and I can do as requiring artificial intelligence, as we figure out how to do them, that area of artificial intelligence keeps getting whittled away and getting smaller and smaller, because all the things that we thought required intelligence turn out to be actually quite simple to do. In fact, computer chess doesn't seem to be artificial intelligence anymore. Well, computers are better than humans at chess. We now know how to build a chess program. I can take a first-year computer scientist, get him to write a chess program in a day, and within a week, telling him what to do, it could be grandmaster status. There's no intelligence. It's all purely mechanical. So building a chess program is not AI anymore. And so the mysteries of the human brain are slowly being uncovered, and the mysteries, the secrets of intelligence, aren't such big secrets anymore, and they're not so mysterious. Some special reasoning, some special powers that we have, in a lot of cases, we figured them out, and they're all purely mechanical. Now, when you think about artificial intelligence, we're trying to do something in a computer or a silicon chip that you do in your brain. We basically end up with two architectures. On the left, of course, we have the human architecture. That's the brain. That's what's doing everything that we do: vision, learning, speech. But now we have something on the right which does the same thing. At the heart of it is just a little computer chip. And yeah, there's a bunch of other things that put it into a big box, like keyboards and screens, and those are just input-output devices. It's really just a little chip. And so we're trying to solve a problem, intelligence, using two different architectures. And we've seen that before. We know how to fly. We've seen birds. And birds fly by flapping their wings, and they're aerodynamic. But of course, when you tackle the problem, we don't mimic how birds fly. We did in the beginning. If you take a look at all the old classic videos from 100-odd years ago, people tried building flying machines that flap their wings, because birds could do it, why couldn't we? And instead, of course, we now have a jet airplane, which goes much faster than you could possibly imagine, and at much greater heights that you could possibly imagine. It's a different way of solving the same problem, and it's much better. And so it's not a surprise that when we look at human intelligence, we're not bound by a biological solution. We have an electrochemical, electromagnetic solution. Our solutions are going to be different, and they'll be faster, and perhaps they'll even be better. And that means if you have different architectures in which you're trying to solve a problem, you want to learn chess using a human brain, you want to learn chess using a computer, it's not surprising that if you have different architectures, you get different solving methods. And so humans are very good at some things like how, why, what, where, when, asking those kind of questions and answering them. Computers are very good at sifting through possibilities. If I do X and he does Y, and if I do Z, what is the result? And they can do all the possibilities. Computers are very good at doing things that humans are very bad at. So for example, if you ask a computer to consider 1 billion possible scenarios and choose the best one, what's 1 billion to a computer? No problem. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't get bored. It'll do 1 billion things. Now, if I asked you, what is the best way to get from here to West Edmonton Mall, there are probably a billion different routes that you could take. Most of them stupid, right? And a computer can look at every single one and tell you which one is the fastest. We wouldn't be so interested in the fastest. We would use our knowledge and we'd probably come up with perhaps the best route, but if it wasn't the best route, it would probably be the closest route. But we wouldn't consider a route that goes from here to St. Albert to Edson and back to West Edmonton Mall. That works, but it's pretty stupid. Computers can look at everything in a split second. We can't, we don't. We use knowledge or heuristics to try and come up with an answer. So computers are good at looking at billions of things. We can't. We get bored. Give me 10 things, I'll do them. Give me 1,000 things, I'm never going to do them. I'm just too bored. Computers are also very good at doing precise mathematical calculations. If I ask you to say, compute the third order partial differential equation, the answer to this third order partial differential equation to 64 digits of accuracy, bang, the computer will give it to you. Can you do a third order partial differential equation in your head? To even 1 digit of accuracy, let alone 64? No. But it's easy for computers. And computers have other capabilities. A computer can memorize the entire Encyclopedia Britannica, right? The whole Wikipedia is online. I can ask it a question, it'll give you an answer right off. It's like Jeopardy. If you saw, was it 2 years, 3 years ago, IBM's program Watson, which played Jeopardy, you give it a question, it gets you the answer right off the bat. And once you understand the technology, there's no magic in it. But it's got access to all that knowledge. We have some knowledge. Our memories are rather small. We can memorize hundreds of things or thousands of things. But billions or trillions, computers can do that. So, fundamental difference. Brain, computer. Brain can do some things well, some things badly. Computers can do some things well, some things badly. My computer can memorize 1 billion things, but to carry on an intelligent conversation with you, it's not very good. So computers still have weaknesses. Now, I can tell you all these impressive things about computers, but when you really look under the hood inside one of these computers, and you're really just looking at this 1/4-inch silicon chip, when it comes right down to it and you look at how a program that is supposedly smart, it's doing impressive things, it's playing chess at a grandmaster level, you actually find out when you look at what it's doing that there actually is very little intelligence. It's just following orders. And yet, even though it's just following orders and doing it perhaps stupidly, the end result is that it looks intelligent. And so some people ask, is this a paradox? I have a program that does something, and by my standards, how it's doing it is really stupid. But it's still doing it, and it's doing it at a high level of performance. How can you be doing something really stupid and yet you get intelligent behavior? And the answer to that really is, the fundamental question is, what is intelligence? If I tell you how a computer plays chess, you're going to say, that's dumb. And yet it beats everybody in the world. So is it intelligent? The results are intelligent. How it got to the results may not be intelligent. I've picked on chess because, of course, games is my area. Let me show you an example of this. This is from 1997. Garry Kasparov, then the world champion, played an exhibition match against the chess machine Deep Blue. I do emphasize this was an exhibition match. IBM put up $1 million to play this match, and Garry Kasparov thought he could win easily, so he accepted the challenge and ended up embarrassing himself. I was actually at the match in the audience when this was filmed. You'll see here, this is the last game where Garry Kasparov lost the last game and therefore lost the match, and you're going to see how exasperated he is. And you're going to see a press conference afterwards and listen to him. One of the things that you're going to see off to your left-hand side is the camera's going to pan over to a table of people. And just watch that table of people. There's some interesting people there. So let's see here.
As long as I could keep under pressure, forget today's game. I mean, Deep Blue hasn't won a single game out of 5 because, again, game 2 I resigned when I was forced to draw. Now, forced a draw. Now, if somebody has another opinion, stand up and tell that the position was not a draw. Game 2 was resigned in a completely drawing position. Is it a correct statement? No, is it the correct? No, I just want. No,
this person's interesting.
Is it the correct statement, Mr. Benjamin? Game 2. Final position was draw. Now, very important. Now it was recognized that Deep Blue made a bad mistake in a completely winning strategical position, blunder, a perpetual check.
The reason why I pointed out that table, the person who I pointed to, his name is Murray Campbell. Born in Edmonton. His family still lives here in Edmonton. His brother just recently retired from the government. Did his bachelor's degree and master's degree here at the University of Alberta before going to Carnegie Mellon to do his PhD, and then joining Deep Blue. He's one of the 3 authors of Deep Blue. So whenever you hear Deep Blue, there's a very strong University of Alberta connection, one of the 3 co-authors. Now, when you listen to Garry Kasparov, he said, Deep Blue hasn't won a single game of the 5, and he talked about game 2, blunder, etc. The final result was a 6-game match. Kasparov lost 2 games, won 1, and drew 3. But here he talked only about 5 games, because if you saw the rest of the press conference, he just lost the 6 games. And it doesn't count. It didn't count because he wasn't feeling well and he didn't feel up to play. So we don't count that game. And in game 2, he said, well, there was a blunder. He had a completely winning strategical position, blah, 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 blah. And we don't count that game either. What happened in game 2 is that Kasparov got completely outplayed. Deep Blue played the most unbelievably brilliant game that any human in the world would be so proud of. I'm a strong chess player. The beauty and elegance of Deep Blue's play was overwhelming. Everybody, including myself in the audience, was just in awe. And then something bizarre happened. Deep Blue played the obvious move, the move that everybody, including strong grandmasters, would have played because it's the obvious move. And it turns out the obvious move was not the best move, because after you play that obvious move, there is a miracle. There's a Hail Mary in the position, something that's just an incredible fluke that would allow Garry Kasparov to draw. And he didn't see it. And nobody in the audience, including myself, saw it. And it took 2 or 3 days before people actually discovered this fluke. And so technically in game 2, Deep Blue was winning. It made this mistake, an obvious winning move that turned out to have a flaw in it. And there was a very deep, complex line that would have allowed Garry Kasparov to draw. He did not see it. And so he argues, you can't count game 2 because, I could have drawn it. No, Garry, you didn't draw it, you lost it. Of course, what he fails to point out is game 1, which is the only game he won, because it was drawn until the end. And then Deep Blue encountered a bug and instead of making the best move, the algorithm made the worst move, and they resigned immediately. And so you could argue, well, Gary, you really didn't win game one because there was a bug, right? And so it was really nonsensical. Anyway, Gary Kasparov was very bitter. He lost the match, and he lost a lot of respect from his antics. But the reality was he was the better player at that time. 10 years later, you can say that computers really were superhuman. But at that time, Kasparov was the better man, and had he taken this match seriously, he would have won. But from the AI point of view, let's take a look at this. If this was a boxing match, here's the scorecard. On the height side, Deep Blue had a height advantage. Deep Blue was inside a refrigerator. The refrigerator was about 6'5", so Deep Blue towered over Gary Kasparov, which is very intimidating. Gary Kasparov was a very svelte 176 pounds. He certainly played tennis quite often, exercised a certain amount every day. Deep Blue, on the other hand, was like a sumo wrestler extraordinaire, 2,400 pounds, really bulky. Yes, it was a refrigerator, but man, you're not going to push this thing out of the way. It was bloody heavy. Gary Kasparov was 34 years old at the prime of his career. He'd been champion for almost a decade, I guess. Deep Blue was only a half-year old. Its physical body had been built literally 6 months before. However, its intelligence, the software that drove Deep Blue, had been evolving for 10 years. It's one of the amazing things about computers and intelligence. You can create the intelligence and software, pick it up, and move it into another body. Wouldn't it be so nice if we could take our brains and move them out of an old body and put them into a young body? And maybe one day we'll be able to do that. In terms of computational speed, Gary Kasparov had a massive, massive advantage. He had 50 billion computers. 50 billion computers. They were a specialized model. They're called a neuron computer, very simple, but 50 billion of them. Poor Deep Blue had a pathetic number of computers, only 512. Just a massive computing advantage for Gary Kasparov. However, all is not as it seems. Although Gary Kasparov had incredible computing power, his computers were very, very slow. And as a result, he could analyze about 2 chess positions per second. That's all you could do. Deep Blue, on the other hand, was analyzing 200 million chess positions per second. In fact, it had the capability of doing 1 billion positions per second, but the software was not able to actually generate enough work to keep the computer fully busy. So you could argue it was only running at 20% capacity, and still it was doing 200 million chess positions per second. In terms of the knowledge that the computer had, Gary Kasparov had an extremely deep understanding of chess. Deep Blue, on the other hand, its knowledge was very primitive. It's the kind of knowledge you would give to a beginner. And because the knowledge was so primitive, it made up for it in terms of speed. Gary used electrochemical as his power source. Deep Blue was only electrical. Important thing, this is a human element, is the ego factor. Gary Kasparov has an enormous ego. He is God's gift to the world, and nothing will stand in his way. Deep Blue is very modest. It never gloats, it never complains, it's very polite, never says anything. On the other hand, I can tell you, since I know the programmers very well, the programmers of Deep Blue have a big ego. So there's an example of 2 different architectures. You've got the human architecture, the Gary Kasparov model of the human architecture, and you've got the computer architecture, the Deep Blue model. And you can see they're just fundamentally different. And you can take the Deep Blue model and update it to the year 2013 and put in one of Deep Fritz or any of the other well-known programs out there, and you have a program that is superhuman. Gary Kasparov and the rest of the world can't keep up with computers. Completely different ways of doing it, and yet the bottom line is Deep Blue plays better chess. Here's another example of man versus machine. Actually, I'll just leave that off so I can sort of give you the punchline on it. Anybody here do crossword puzzles? A few of you. Okay, I don't know. My wife got me hooked on crossword puzzles. I'm not a big fan, but on the weekend in the journal, you got the New York Times crossword puzzle, and okay, so I don't know why I'm a glutton for punishment, but I do the weekend New York Times crossword puzzles, and they're the hardest. Monday is the easiest, Tuesday's a bit harder, etc., and when you get to the weekend, they're killers. And so I don't know why I do the weekend. I should do the Monday and the Tuesday one because they're more my speed. And when I go through the New York Times, you know, I might get 25% of the puzzle. That's it. I mean, they're hard. They have words in there that I've never heard of, and although I think I'm reasonably intelligent and know a lot of general knowledge, there's so many questions there that I have no idea what the answer is. So I do it as a way of, I don't know, showing how stupid I am, and as a way of actually, when you see the answers, at least learning something out of it. But a friend of mine, Michael Littman, developed a crossword puzzle program called Proverb. And he said, well, how do I go about building a crossword puzzle program? And I want it to be superhuman. So the first thing he did is he got access to all of the New York Times crossword puzzles and put them in electronic format, and the LA Times and the TV Times and all the major crossword puzzles, and just built a database of all the clues and answers. Now, when his program runs, the first thing it does is say, you know, like, there's a clue. What is the capital of Edmonton? First thing it does is go into the database to see if that question has ever been asked before and look up the answer. Now, I told you that I slave away, and if I'm really on my game and I really get lucky, I might get 25% of that puzzle. Proverb looks up the questions in there to see if they've been previously asked before, and that alone gives it 34%. So by just memorizing all of the previous crossword puzzles, the well-known crossword puzzles, it already scores 34%, and I look stupid, because obviously I'm not going to memorize the history of the New York Times crossword puzzle. What's the other thing it does? So let's look at something like capital of Alberta, okay? You look it up in the crossword puzzle, 8 letters. Perfect. What do you do? What do you do today if you have a question you don't know the answer? You Google it, right? So that's what it does. It then has a database on its computer and it basically does Google searches or specialized searches. So what it does is it takes capital of Alberta and it feeds it into a whole bunch of standard databases like Wikipedia, Internet Movie Database, a history database, a medical database, geography database, a dozen different databases. And it's looking, capital of Alberta, on the top hits that come back, and it's looking for an 8-letter word. So it grabs from those pages all the 8-letter words, and it sees which one seems to have the most commonality. If you look up capital of Alberta in a medical database, you're probably not going to get any hits. But on a geography one, you'll probably get a bunch of hits. History one, you'll probably get a bunch of hits. And lo and behold, there's an 8-letter word, Edmonton, that seems to be in common. And it's probably one of the, if not the most frequently used 8-letter words. So it says, well, you know, I went to these pages and an 8-letter word, Edmonton, came up. I'm just going to plunk it into my crossword puzzle. It doesn't understand the clue, capital of Edmonton. Why would I ever go to a medical database or the movie database to look up the capital of Alberta? I would never do that. It's stupid. But it takes that out and sends it out to every database it can and then just sees where you get the most hits. Is that smart? It's stupid. But it works. So Proverbs scores well on the New York Times crossword puzzles. It scores 97%. 97%. I score 25% on a good day. But what bugs me is I understand the clues. When it says, what is the capital of Alberta? I know what capital means. I know what Alberta means. I know where to look for that answer. It does not understand the clues. As far as it's concerned, capital of Alberta, those are just 3 random words, and it just puts it out into a search engine, and then page comes up and it does word counts, and that's it. And it beats me. But we already know this is a powerful technique. Information retrieval without understanding the information is the basis behind Google. You put anything in there, and it has no idea what you typed in. It has no concept of what the words mean. All it's doing is saying, you said capital of Alberta, and it's looking for pages that have capital of Alberta on it. And the ones that are the most popular are the ones that it gives you as the top hits. And so it's stupid. It does not understand the semantics. But it gives me the answers, usually with high probability. So another example of computers can do things in different ways and achieve better results. So what is my definition of artificial intelligence? It has nothing to do with the biology, because like humans and us, we think we're intelligent. We're not really intelligent. We're just executing algorithms in our head, and for many of the things that you do and you think require intelligence, I can show you an algorithm that is really dumb that does exactly what you do and maybe even better. And so what is artificial intelligence to me? Artificial intelligence creates the illusion of intelligent behavior. Am I really creating intelligence in my computer? No. But I'm giving you the results. It doesn't matter how I achieve the results. All that matters is the results. It plays grandmaster chess. That's impressive. I equate playing grandmaster chess with some intelligence. The fact that it's doing it by looking at billions and billions of positions is irrelevant. It doesn't matter the method. It's only the end results. By the way, we do have artificial intelligence. There's also something called artificial stupidity. And I just want to point out that some humans try to create the illusion of intelligence as well. So now what I want to do is talk about some of the successes and interesting stories about AI. And mostly this has a games-related theme because that's my area. So, what is the most visible artificial intelligence? And the answer is, to the average person out there, where they encounter artificial intelligence the most is in computer games. Because basically almost all computer games have artificial intelligence underneath the covers. And computer games are a wonderful experimental test bed. It's one thing to develop a system that works in the real world, but it's also a lot easier to try and experiment with it and learn and do research in a laboratory, a controlled environment. And a game is a controlled environment because you can create a game and you can test things out to see what works and doesn't work and then apply it to the real world. So for example, just an interesting story, I developed technology for my checker playing program. And that checker playing software became the basis of a spin-off company here at the University of Alberta to do protein and DNA analysis. Well, we developed the technology using our experimental test bed, which was the game of checkers, and the technology was much more general than that and turned out to have applicability for understanding the human genome. Now, who knew? So games are a wonderful area for experimenting with artificial intelligence, and many of the big successes in artificial intelligence can be traced back to stuff that was developed and looked at in a games context. So some of the challenges right now in computer games are creating realistic behavior. You want to have computers act in these games in a realistic way. I would love to be able to interact with a computer in a knowledgeable, reasonable way. Or have a realistic conversation that's not, scripted. If you play many of these games, you'll find the conversations are all pretty limited, only what's been scripted there. But there's a lot of work being done on creating computer programs that create the illusion of a real intelligent conversation. So there's lots of stuff going on in computer games. This is a picture of the game called Facade, Michael Mateus. It's about 10 years old now. But this was the first game which really showcased AI. If you look at it, you can get it on the web. It's not much to look at today because the graphics are pretty simple, as you can see today, and we have high standards for graphics these days. But one person's definition of good AI in games was, I want an AI that's realistic enough that it'll make me cry. And this is the first game where people actually got emotionally attached to the characters, and as one person said, I almost felt like crying. And what it is a game that you participate in, and you have conversations with these two people, and you've been invited over to their house for drinks, and as you converse with them, you discover that they're having marital difficulties. And as the evening goes on, it gets more and more awkward, and you're a participant in that, and I guess it strikes a nerve and gets really close to home, because I think all of us can relate to the kind of issues there. It's a general game in the sense that once you play it, the second time you play it, it can go off in different branches in different ways, so it's a different story. It's the same thing, that they're having marital difficulties and can lead you to other awkward scenarios. But I've played it, and you just get into the situation where it's really uncomfortable about the conversation, and in the end you feel really sorry, and because of it you get really immersed into the game. And there are newer games out there where we can see this this sort of realism that brings the art of interactive entertainment to life and makes us feel part of this immersive experience. Although I'm touting some good things about games, there's also some bad things, a long way to go. Now, my apologies for this. You see this beautiful white screen? I've given this talk before, and my video here works perfectly. But I upgraded my Microsoft software, and now there's the video, and it will play, and you can hear everything, but you get no picture. But if you take the same movie and you run it outside of Microsoft, it works perfectly. So, there it is. It's not in Microsoft, and we will now see the video. So, I'd like to tell you once, this is an aside, I was working on a book once, and I came across, I just got so frustrated with Microsoft products, I compiled a list of bugs. And I just got so annoyed that I phoned up Microsoft Help one day and said, these things are just wrong. And they said, what are you talking about, sir? I said, I've got a list of 12 bugs I'd like you to fix. And she says, I was told, I'm sorry, sir, there are no bugs in our projects. And I said, what do you mean? Of course these are bugs. And I said, no, there are no bugs, sir. If there are things that are not meeting your specifications, please let us know what they are, and we'll try and meet your expectations. So I showed her the first one, and she said, well, that's not a problem. I said, well, of course it's wrong. And she says, no, it's just your expectations are wrong. And this went on, and finally I just gave up. It was completely hopeless. So I'd like to point out on my PowerPoint slide that your expectations are that you should only hear the sound and not see the video. You should see a white screen. And the fact that I've had to exit out into an independent viewer is solely because you really didn't want to see the image, and Microsoft knows that you really didn't want to see the graphics. And so there's an example of how much smarter Microsoft is, and that it will transform the world. This is from it's probably 5 years old now, but I like this video, and there's no evidence to say that the world has progressed significantly beyond this. It's from a game called Oblivion, which was touted as fantastic AI. So what I want to do is play this, and what you're going to see is this guy, and he's in this fantasy land, and you're going to see him go into a room, and he's going to try and get a reaction out of the shopkeeper, and so you'll see what happens. You know, the nice idyllic setting, beautiful deer walking around.
Well met. Hello.
Hello.
What's new with you?
I heard people saying they ran into goblins around here not long ago. I can't stand those things.
Goblins, evil, foul-smelling little brutes.
Okay, now I'm going to try and get a reaction out of the shopkeeper. He's there, he's looking at me. Let's just see what I try and do and see what kind of reaction I get. Jump on the counter. Kick something. No reaction. Is this artificial intelligence behavior? Now look at those feathers.
Somebody help! Come quickly! We've got a burglar! Stop! Thief!
Stop right there, criminal scum! Nobody breaks the law on my watch. I'm confiscating your stolen goods. Now pay your fine, or it's off to jail.
I'm not going to pay the fine, of course. What do you think I am, stupid?
Then pay with your blood! Am I supposed to be impressed?
My apologies for the violence. What you're going to see is I'm going to run and then I'm going to get trapped at the end, and just watch what happens.
Watch out!
Watch this guy. He just walks in the middle. The knife, sword going through him.
Take the mine!
You get the idea. I mean, how realistic is that? Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done to create the kind of realism we want. Okay, what's the most successful AI applications? And there's no question, even in a survey of artificial intelligence experts done a few years ago, the success of building strong game-playing programs is the greatest success so far. And the interesting thing is many of those landmarks have been done at the University of Alberta. So in 1994, I built a checker program that won the Human World Checkers Championship. And in 2007, I let the program continue computing, and it's now perfect. You know, like tic-tac-toe, we know that a perfect play leads to a draw. I have a perfect checkers program. Checkers, perfect play leads to a draw. In chess in 1997, computers, Deep Blue won an exhibition match against the world champion, and of course you already know Murray Campbell was one of the 3 co-authors. Michael Burrow, who's a faculty member here at the University of Alberta later in 1997, his Othello program crushed the Human World Champion. In the late 1990s in Scrabble, a PhD student of mine wrote a program that was superhuman at Scrabble. Humans have no chance at Scrabble, nor should they, because the computer's got the whole dictionary in its memory. Every word, most of which you've never heard of, is in its dictionary. By the way, did you know AI is a word? AI? It's pronounced I. It's a three-toed sloth found in Australia. So it's actually a legal word. Who knew? Backgammon in the early 2000s, Jerry Tesoro from IBM built a superhuman backgammon program, but it was based on technology developed by Rich Sutton, who's a professor here at the University of Alberta. And at the U of A, we've got the world's best computer poker software. And in 2-player Texas Hold'em limit poker, in 2007, we became superhuman. And right now, it's pretty close that we're superhuman in 3-player poker as well. So, big success. What's the most used AI program in the world? And without a doubt, it's email spam filters. I hate spam. And of course, we all have spam filters. Most mail programs have it built in by default. You can buy spam filters. And all it does is learn patterns. And from those patterns, if it reads an email that matches those patterns, it puts it into your spam mailbox. What are the biggest deployed AI systems in the world? Visa is the biggest, and they use it to detect potential credit card fraud. So not that long ago, a couple months ago, I got a phone call, and Visa phoned me up and said, "Are you in New York City?" And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm in Edmonton." And they said, did you buy a stereo today in New York? And I said, no, I did not. And they canceled the transaction. Well, somebody had somehow got my credit card number and had purchased a stereo in New York City. Okay? Every time you make a credit card purchase, there is an electronic file on you that matches, maintains a history of your purchases, what kinds of things you buy and where. And if ever there's a transaction that does not match that pattern, they flag it, and they'll either stop the transaction and contact you, or they'll call the police or something like that. And so some people find it annoying, but for me it's wonderful that they're doing this, because what they're doing is trying to prevent crime. Walmart has got a massive artificial intelligence-based system. What they do is they watch, all of their inventory is run through a big supercomputing complex in the southern United States for every store. And what they do is watch trends in sales of products to predict when the product is going to run out, so that the products get sent to the store in advance of when the product will run out with the appropriate quantity. So they don't want to have, if you're going to buy plasma TVs, they don't want to have 1,000 plasma TVs if no one's going to buy 1,000. If over a typical week, maybe 3 or 4 are bought, then maybe they'll keep 5 or 6 in inventory. And when it gets low, it'll automatically trigger it and bring more to the store. So that's the Walmart story. The biggest AI systems in the world, which we don't know about, are undoubtedly the US military, because they're doing massive amounts of artificial intelligence. I mean, smart missiles that can navigate through 3D space and blow up a building with pinpoint precision. It's all controlled by AI. Face recognition is a huge thing right now. The US government has got some very impressive face recognition systems. Those security cameras that you see from buildings or towers looking down onto squares, those things are taking pictures of people's faces and matching those faces to a database. And they can tell you who's in that square at that time, or most people. And it turns out face recognition is a very hard problem. You and I can do it. I can meet you and see your face, and then next time I see you, I'll say hello. But you could have changed. Maybe you're unshaven today, or maybe you're not wearing your glasses, or you've got different clothes on. But of course, when you've got faces in a crowd, it's different, because it's not like it's a head-on shot like a passport photo. They can be at a side or an angle or partially blocked, or you could have a hat on, or you could be wearing sunglasses. Very, very difficult, but the US government has some impressive stuff there. Who are the biggest AI investors? Who's pumping the most money into AI research besides the military? Military funds everything, right? The biggest ones, without a doubt, are Google, Yahoo, and Microsoft. They believe in AI, and it is a huge portion of their company. In fact, almost the entire research team in Google is artificial intelligence people. One former U of A professor left here about, 7 years ago, got recruited away to Google, and he works on language translation. So, if you ever use the translate option on Google, he works on translation from Chinese to English and English to Chinese. Anyway, I'm very jealous of him. I just saw him 2 weeks ago in California. I visited Google and we had breakfast together. The reason I'm jealous is because he got there a year before Google went public, and as part of his employment, he got all these paper shares of Google that were worth nothing. And now, well, as of 2 weeks ago, Google shares are now worth $1,000 each. So I don't know how many thousands of shares he has. By his admission, it's many thousands. But each one of those shares is worth $1,000. So even if he only has 1,000 shares, it's $1 million. And he has many thousands. I have a good job at the U of A. I will never have many thousands of $1,000 Google shares. Never. Microsoft is a huge believer in AI. Their help systems, when you ask for help, are run by AI. In fact, actually, I'm very disappointed in Microsoft because I think their help systems are substandard. User preferences, Amazon.com and Netflix use this extensively. You know, when you buy a book at Amazon, next time you go there, it'll say, you read that you bought this book, you would probably enjoy this other book. And so they're modeling you, trying to understand what you like and don't like and offering suggestions. And of course, people are gullible enough that when Amazon suggests something to you, it turns out a lot of people buy those suggestions. Here's a famous quote from Bill Gates about 15 years ago. A breakthrough in machine learning would be worth 10 Microsofts. Talk about some cool AI applications. Space is a big one. We know about the Mars rover. The coolest one of the navigation-based AI applications is Deep Space One, which launched about 15 years ago. It's still up there. It's the first space mission that's controlled by a computer. And Deep Space One is going way out into the, beyond Saturn. And it takes a while for the transmissions to come back to Earth. And so Deep Space One is making decisions based on its AI. You can't do the following. You can't say, the system say, oh my God, there's a meteorite coming at me. Well, I'm going to send a message to Earth. 60 minutes later, Earth gets it and says, oh my goodness, we're going to have you veer to the left so that you don't run into it, right? And then an hour later, comes back to the satellite, and that satellite changes direction. Too late, satellite's destroyed, right? So the idea is here to have this system completely self-controlled, that it actually does that kind of maneuvering all on its own. Here's another one because, oh, I wish this would happen so badly. This is ready for real world. Here's a typical roadway. You will notice as you look at it, it's intersection, and the green blobs are cars moving, and at the intersection you'll see reds. Those are the red lights. And so just like a typical intersection, cars start queuing up as they wait for the light to turn green. And eventually it turns green and you go through the intersection. Look how inefficient that is. Now, the technology is here. We just have to educate people to have computers take your car through the intersection. So imagine that when you approach an intersection, the computer takes control of your car, drives you through the intersection, and then releases control back to you. That's not science fiction. It exists. There are real systems deployed out there that can do this. It's just very difficult for people to accept having a computer take control of their car. But you can see this on the left-hand side, this scenario, and there's very few cars going through the intersection. I hate it. The other day I'm coming home. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. What the hell am I doing at a red light? And there's not a single person around. And there I am stuck watching this stupid pedestrian light going 43, 42, 41. I mean, I'm waiting there for 40 odd seconds for this thing to turn green so that I can legally go through the intersection. Let me go through the intersection. Here on the right is the result of the research. Now you'll notice here these are 3 lanes, 6 lanes across. This is 12 lanes. So it's a much busier highway. And there's a lot more vehicles. And what happens here is when the cars approach within a certain distance of the intersection, computers take it and drive the car through the intersection. And the computers don't care about distance. If you can squeeze through, that's good enough. Doesn't matter there was only 6 inches worth of clearance, you were clear, right? So as you watch the video, imagine, would you want to be in one of those cars that goes through this intersection with computer controls? Because some of those interactions look pretty darn scary to me. But look at the increase in throughput. And this is easy to do. All the technology's in place. We just need to allow people to feel comfortable having a computer do this. Of course, you also have to trust that there's no bugs in the software. And that's a different story. Convinced? I'm convinced because I don't want to sit at this intersection, right? Here's another AI application, automated driving. This is a picture of Google's self-driving car. It's very well known. It's legal now in California, Florida, and Nevada. Google has the car. It has a sensor on top. You can see it up here. It spins 60 times a second, looking visually. And this car has driven something like 300,000 miles with no accidents. You know, the computer is fully aware at all times. It doesn't fall asleep, and it does a great job. Here I am. This is a former student of mine here from U of A. His name is Matt McNaughton. He did his master's with me. He got his PhD, and now he works for the Google Drive team. So 2 weeks ago, I was in this car, and we went out on the highway, and I have to admit, it's a little bit disconcerting to have somebody sitting in the driver's seat with their, you know, arms crossed like this, and the car is driving at 60, 65 miles per hour, and the steering wheel is moving on its own, and the car is braking on its own. It didn't take long before I felt comfortable with it, but you can imagine what this would do to the world if cars could just drive themselves. You wouldn't have to own a car. You could just say, you know, I want to go from my home to U of A, have a car come to my house and be there at 8:30, and the car would just show up, hop into the car, it would drive me to work, and instead of sitting for the rest of the day in a parking lot, it would go off and drive other people to other places. So incredible, incredible potential technology. Another area where AI is being active is in serious games. We talk about games, and most games are for fun and entertainment, but serious games are intended to have real outcomes. And so I saw an incredible demonstration of a serious game on the medical side. It's a US military application where it was training doctors to go to Afghanistan. You know, a doctor, you get trained, you work in a beautiful, pristine hospital in Canada or the United States, and great operating room, and everything is septic, and all the supplies are clean, it's sanitary. And you go to Afghanistan, and there could be snipers, and you're shot, and somebody's lying on the ground, and you got to do some emergency surgery or triage to help this person. It's the worst conditions possible. How do you train a doctor to go from downtown New York City, being a doctor, to the back streets of Kabul, Afghanistan? And so this 3D immersive environment was trying to train it. It was actually more than just a game, because you would be doing it physically in an immersive environment. So there would be, you know, a dummy there that you would actually interact with, and there would be snipers and all sorts of other things happening. And you know, it wasn't like being in Afghanistan in real, but it was close enough that you learned some of the things that you needed to do to survive in a hostile environment. So lots of cool games are being invented to try and teach people serious applications. Another favorite is home robotics. Out of MIT, a spin-off company, Roomba, is very well known for its vacuum cleaners. And everybody looks at the vacuum as kind of a neat novelty. It does an okay job. It has AI in it. It's got to navigate around a room. It still has problems picking up, differentiating between $100 bills and scrap pieces of paper. But, you know, I never litter my floor with $100 bills, so it's okay. But they have many variants. They have a pool cleaning robot, mowing the lawn robot. They even have a shoveling snow robot. And it's a bit too pricey for me, but it's on my bucket list. I want a robot that's going to shovel my snow, because I really don't like that. One thing I want to talk about in home robotics, these things are kind of cool, but the reality of the robots that we see as portrayed in the media, science fiction, books, etc., the reality is these kind of robots where we have humanoid forms that can do the kinds of things that we want to do is not going to be in my lifetime. Probably will be in yours. There is a lot of work being done on humanoid type of robots, but to get them to the quality of vision and dexterity and functionality that we want is still many decades away. When we talk about AI, we also have to talk about ethical issues. A friend of mine wrote a controversial book in 2007. It's called Love and Sex with Robots. He believes that robotic sex is just around the corner. There are a lot of lonely people, and with the robotic technology and the new materials that are being developed, he believes people are going to fall in love with robots. I've met many humans who act like robots, but I don't imagine I could ever fall in love with a entity made out of metal, but he believes it's going to happen. Another ethical issue is, do robots have rights? This is actually a big issue. There is a Robotic Human Rights Society that says robots are coming. We need to work on the law to make sure that they have rights. If you have a robot like an R2-D2 in Star Wars, what rights does it have? Should you have the ability to just turn it off, kill it? Don't know. And then computers as judge and jury. There is software right now that for classes of legal cases, the computer can render a verdict. Would you like to go to court and have a computer make the decision as to whether you're guilty or not? It's going to happen. It will happen, certainly within my lifetime. And coming soon, there are many, many applications of artificial intelligence that are here, and they will become pervasive, such as personalized healthcare. There's the smart condo. If you go over to, it's in Eka, it's second or third floor, I can't remember now. It's a condo inside the building which is instrumented to be what's called a smart condo. All sorts of sensors so that it can monitor the people living there. You can imagine to being, an old person, and the sensors will monitor your activity and make sure everything is normal, and monitor even your biological sensors, and when anything is abnormal, could make an automatic call to the doctor. Vehicles I talked about, their automated vehicles are coming, high quality language translation, so many different things are just, they're in the pre-production stage. It's going to happen, and it's going to happen very, very soon. What are the impediments? First is there's huge public perceptions from the science fiction literature. We all read science fiction. Who hasn't watched 2001 and the movie and not worried about what robots might do killing humans? So we have a real problem there, because AI, like any technology, can be used for good and bad. And so there's incredible opportunities for using AI in a good way, but when you take a look at the sci-fi literature, you often see AI being used in a bad way, and everything. You can come up with a dark scenario, but the upside is so incredibly positive. Another impediment to AI is that it's largely invisible because it's underneath the covers. I mean, if I tell you that Visa's using artificial intelligence every single time that you log a transaction, you have no idea, because it's underneath the covers. You just don't know it. If Amazon says, hey, you like reading this book, why don't you read that book? Again, it's not obvious that AI is going on. Most of the games that you play, you have no idea that there's AI underneath the covers. So it has a credibility problem because nobody knows what's going on. And the other problem is lack of knowledge in industry. U of A produces many graduates each year. Most of them leave the province and the country because there aren't good jobs. Particularly in Alberta and in Canada, companies are slow to adopt new technologies. It's considered leading edge, and therefore they lose huge opportunities because they're laggards. And it's a shame that we're losing all these great people, primarily the States. I was just at Google 2 weeks, and I had lunch with 20 of my former students. I've graduated about 75 to 80 graduate students, and the fact that I'm telling you 20 of them are at Google is a very sad statement that those students left the country and are now working at Google. And that doesn't include my students who are working at Microsoft, Yahoo, Twitter, and Amazon, right? There's no jobs here. Why are these fantastic jobs in the States and not in Alberta or Canada? I mean, somebody needs to wake people up and say, you want a knowledge economy, you want to be 21st century, then get the companies and to start developing the technology that will be relevant. The oil and gas industry is not, to me, a relevant industry. It's just digging things out of the ground and processing it. And eventually it's going to run out. Knowledge doesn't run out. So my conclusions of my talk, artificial intelligence is already a major part of your life. If we sit down and analyze your day today, I bet you encountered artificial intelligence many, many times and you didn't even know it. And AI will become an even more important part of your life, and you probably still won't know it. And the bottom line is that AI is being deployed on a daily basis, and new products are coming up daily. Most of the time you don't even know it, but they are going to have a profound impact on all of us, and I believe a profound impact on our quality of life. So with that, I'd like to end and be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Hi. So you were talking earlier on about how there's a couple of people have different definitions of what artificial intelligence is. You mentioned how it can be information retrieval without understanding the information. Do you think people think of artificial intelligence innovating and understanding innovation, or are there any limits because it doesn't do that?
Sorry, I didn't catch the last part. What you said.
Do you think there's limits on artificial intelligence in the sense that it doesn't understand information?
So, I mean, there are systems out there that do understand the information. But quite frankly, they're few and far between, and they're extremely hard to build. Think about English. I hope you understood what I was saying, but I could have actually been filled my talk with a whole bunch of grammatical errors, and you probably still would have understood what I said. You have an incredible ability to infer what I'm saying, even if I didn't actually say it. And that's amazing, because we're not only understanding, but we're also doing all sorts of error correcting. We don't even know it. If I give you sentences with spelling mistakes, you'll still figure out probably what I meant. And so we are absolutely amazing processors of information. What's truly amazing to me, and it really didn't dawn on me until search engines came along, is how much of the information we process really doesn't require any semantics. It's all pattern matching. I mean, like capital of Alberta. Google will tell you the answer, or at least a program like Proverb, which takes the Google pages and turns it into the answer, will give you the answer without even understanding the words, and I never believed it. But it's not just that. Machine language translation. Translate from English to French, French back to English. The systems that do that don't understand the words. You'd think that, parlez-vous en français? You need to understand what that says in order to translate that into, do you speak French, right? But they're actually not based on that. They're all based on statistics. They take thousands of documents and they see what the French is in the English, and they see word pairings, and they say, statistically when this word is here in this sentence, I see that word in the English sentence, and so there might be a relationship, and these two words are often seen beside each other, so I can see that in the English as well. The most popular set of French-English, English-French translation is the Hansard data set from the Canadian government, because Canadians are required to produce all government documents in French and English. And so we have this wonderful data set, French and English, and they just run a program on it, and out of it comes the French-English, English-French translator with no understanding of the words. Who knew that you could translate languages without any understanding of the words? It's unbelievable. What's the famous one? It was English to Russian and Russian back. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Spirit is willing, flesh is weak. It's a well-known statement. So they trained a translation system, translated into Russian, and then once it was in Russian, it got translated back to English. And what did it come back? The spirit is willing. It came back, the vodka is good, but the meat was rotten. And you can see how it gets that, right? The spirit is willing. It makes sense, right? So there's still a lot of things that we can't do without fully understanding the semantics, but we're getting so close. And anytime you predict that we can't do it, we do it. And that's what's truly scary. And now the question again becomes is how much of this intelligence that we have up here do we really need to do these things? You know, I'm terrible in other languages, and yet I can write a program in a day that will learn how to translate English into French. I can take my documents and turn them into French, and it won't be perfect, it'll be 90+% good. But hey, Google's got this great study, and don't quote me on the numbers, but they did their English to, I think it was English to French training, and they did it based on 1 million pages of data. And their program got like 65% right. The words were right, the translation was about 65% correct. And instead of 1 million, they did it on 10 million pages. And now suddenly it was like 69% correct. And instead of 10 million, they did it 100 million. And 100 million to 1 billion. And 1 billion to 10 billion. And they just scaled it up, and now it's like 90%. And what it showed is, you just give the computer program more data, more statistics. They get better and better and better. And there's no learning going on. It's just give it more examples of good translations, more. And it's 90% correct. Do you know how much work it would take me to learn how to translate from English to French with 90% accuracy? My French is pretty bad. Okay, so, and all that's doing is statistics. It's amazing. Yes?
I have another question. It's similar, it's revolving around Google Glass. I hear you can speak in English and then it'll translate to French for you. I guess my concern with that is some people enjoy the act of learning a language, the entire experience revolved around that, and then you have this piece of equipment that can do that for you. When do we have to draw the line in terms of the experience of learning and just using technology to, in a sense, I don't know, make us lazier? I don't know if that's the correct word or...
Well, first of all, there is no line to draw. The technology is there, you can use it or not. Simple as, very simple. I often bicycle places. Why? I don't need the car, I don't need the technology. I want the experience of bicycling. I play chess. I play chess a lot. I enjoy playing chess. The fact that there's a computer over there that can play better than me is completely irrelevant. And so if I want the intellectual challenge of learning a language, that's great. I think there is a danger, though, of people becoming lazy. I saw this with my daughter when she was young. You know, she didn't want to learn math. She said, oh, well, I'll just type it into this calculator and it'll give me the answer. All I need to do is learn how to operate a calculator, right? I don't have to learn how to add, subtract, multiply, divide. So there is a danger of becoming lazy, and yes, we are becoming lazy. You know, do I ever use a dictionary anymore to do my spelling? I mean, I just go into a spell corrector, and it tells me what suggestions. So sometimes it does it automatically for me, and it's not 100% perfect, but it's close enough that I'm willing to take the chance. So yes, we will become lazier.
I guess that's all relative. Like when the calculator first came out, people had similar concerns. So.
Yeah. I mean, the world is changing, and the change is happening in an incredible rate. And it's not just on the health side, because we are living longer, we lead better quality life, but it's also happening on the intellectual side, because we are getting lazier. Look how much music I listen to now. I mean, it used to be when I was a kid growing up, I had to have a physical radio there, which meant that I wasn't listening to it, you know, when I go running. Now I just put an iPod and the earphones and away I go. I mean, technology is just changing me in so many subtle ways. Many of those ways for the better. You guys are too young to know what it was like to have to write an essay, and I would go to the library and sit there and pull out volumes from the Encyclopedia Britannica and leaf through the pages to try and look up a fact, and now all I do is just type a few words into Google, and there's the answer. It's made me incredibly lazy, but it's also made me more productive. There was an interesting study done recently. People said there was a hypothesis that technology is making us poorer writers, because like spelling and grammar, and you have the internet at your disposal, and so people are just not writing really well now. So this was earlier this year, a fascinating study. They started in the year 1900, and every 20 years, I think it was, they went back to schools from the 1900 and got essays that students wrote. 1900, 1920, 1940, and so on. And the results were really surprising. First of all, of course, it's kind of hard to compare, but of course in 1900 everything was handwritten. And now, of course, it's all typed. But the interesting thing was, in the 1900, because everything was handwritten and you didn't have access to information, senior essays, like university essays, were 250 words. I can bat off 250 words in 5 minutes, right? Now, 20 or 120 years later, standard essay lengths are 2,500 to 5,000 words. They also had another measure of complexity, like the complexity of the thoughts. Well, I have access to so much more information. So they had a metric that measured the complexity of the thoughts, and the ones in the 1900s were trivial. You write 250 words, you didn't say much, you didn't have much information, it just all came out of your head, very little facts at your disposal. And today, of course, they're much more complex, the essays that people write. And they measure the facts that you cited. 1900, very few, just things that were common knowledge. And now, of course, you're expected to go on the web and get whatever information you want from Wikipedia, etc. So in some sense, technology, not only maybe it's making us lazier, but people are raising the standards to make us work harder and produce better quality output. And based on this study, to get a university education, it's a lot harder now because technology has raised the bar enormously in terms of essays, the length of the essay, and the complexity of the essay, and the quality in terms of grammar and spelling that is expected. I'm going to have to go in a minute, so I'll take one more question.
We're
okay.
Out of time. So anyway, thank you very, very much for an outstanding
Thank you very much
session.
for coming.